Hello, this is Brendan, and in this video we're going to look over some comic book coloring techniques that I use, and we're going to review a friend of mine who actually is a writer, and we're working together on a comic book, this is the first page of it here. It's called War Torn, and he did this coloring job. I didn't even know. I was very happy about that he wanted to have his hand at doing some artwork as well, so that's really cool. And I told him I'd give him he wanted some feedback. I said certainly, if as long as I can well, I would have given it to him anyway, and but I asked him if I could also make a video out of it, because there's a lot of good stuff in here that we can a lot of stuff to talk about that would be good for other people to learn about as well. The first thing that you might see, now remember, the guy who did this, I think he's a non-artist and he's just getting started at this or something, so don't be critical of it. It's he did a very good job. First of all, using Photoshop, and if you zoom in here, he did a pretty good job making sure that he filled in all the blanks there. I'm not sure how he did that. He filled the color in right up to the line. Maybe a little bit of inconsistency here. We can see how to clear that up. I'll show you a technique for that. I can see a little white space in here, little stuff like that we don't want to happen. Some of the things I want to point out, the good things first, is notice how he did some more light around this area where he's flicking a lighter and he's lighting a cigarette, right? And I'm glad he did this, because you can see in the original it's actually not that easy to make out in the black and white. I didn't do a very good job on this first page, actually. My least favorite page of the whole book is this first page. It's kind of hard to make out, but that's what happens sometimes when you just dive into something. Also, this page should probably be broken down into like 2 pages. There's just too much going on at once. But what's happening, it's called The Beginning. And as you can read here, as you ever look in the sky and think, why am I here? Who hasn't, right? And you see the army guys in the background. There's a war and some things going on, boom and crash and all that. And well, this was one of those days, and he lights his cigarette, right? So it's one of those like semi-romantic wartime moments. And then he goes on and he starts to tell the story. So he's hiding behind this I don't know what you call it, this this military-built wall here with the sandbags and stuff like that. He's hiding back there, lighting a cigarette while stuff goes on. I guess he's too stressed out, and so it's just too much going on at once in the scene. However, coloring it might help make it out a little bit better. But let's see what happened when we first look at this. The colors are really, really strong, and the first thing I wanted to say is that I really like what happened here with the light, how he made his face light up a little bit around here, and then it's a little darker behind that, right? That's like wonderful. That's really good, because that it shows use of lighting and shadow and stuff like that. He did the same thing over here. We have lighter shade of green and then darker to represent that the light is going off there. Another thing I like is this boom area back here. Did a wonderful job of starting off really bright flash in the middle and fades off to the orangish kind of tone, giving us that explosive type of feeling. And there's more of that going on in the background. But one thing that stood out to me immediately, that's a major problem, is the values of the colors that were used. And this goes back to, if you don't have a lot of artistic knowledge, it's not easy to understand why this is a problem, or what is the problem. It's kind of like the first thing you think you do is you grab a color. I want his uniform to be green and the grass should be green, so I grab a green, right? And you'd have like your color palette in here, and you grab a green and you just start coloring it in, and you say, well, there it is, it's done. Why doesn't it look like the more professional artist stuff? It's just kind of like more simple. It's very good, but there's something weird about it. It's kind of muddy. And so, excuse me, in order to figure out what that problem is, what I noticed was all the values are very dark. So I'm going to select this color here. You look in the color palette over here, or I can bring it up over here, regardless. Over on this side here, you can see, look at where it's at. It's up in this really dark area, where you might say, oh, it's nighttime, so that's how it should be. But even still, if you want things to stand out at all, this could be a problem. Even if it's nighttime, that might not be the right approach. And I'll give you an example why. Let me choose some more colors though. Here's a green in the background. Also, it's either very highly saturated up here like this, or it's over in the dark zone. Grab this color here. This one is actually not too bad. That's good. His hair, again, we're up in a very high saturation and also very dark. It's up in this area here. What I want to do is get it more like down in this kind of area. I actually have a video dedicated to this, which I made previously. And so, give you an example. If you're going to say, well, if you're sure about that, Brendan, then how can you prove it that it's better to have the colors down here? Well, there's one trick for that. It's very easy. In this software, you go to colors and desaturate. Now, basically what we're doing is just trying to make it black and white. So whatever software you're using, just try and figure out how to make it black and white. And as soon as you do that, you might notice something. If you turn it black and white and it looks like this, if that's not the effect you're going for, then there might be something wrong. Even with the title here, the saturation, it looked like a very bright blue, right? It looks like a bright, shiny, just neon type of blue bouncing out at you. If that's true, then why is it that when I take the colors away, it looks very dark? Because in reality, the value of that color, even though it looks very brilliant, it's actually very dark. It's highly saturated color. And if you have colors in reality all around you where that's saturated, that dark all the time, even though, there's a difference between a cartoon and reality. And you might say, well, it's just a cartoon, so it's okay. But even in a cartoon, look at Disney. Take any Disney still, take a picture of any Disney scene, and bring it up in your software, and do one of these. It will never look like this. I can almost promise you, unless it's a very strange scene. It's even in the darkest of scenes, they will use a different technique to make you feel like it's dark, to make it feel like it's nighttime, but it won't be like this. This is like really, really dark. It looks like black painted on black, right? So in order to avoid that, what we do is try and go into the lighter saturation areas. So I'm going to choose this color that he used there, and what I'm going to do, instead of being all the way up here, I'm going to bring it down like midway and go in there. Now another thing while we're here is I have all of my pen on a separate layer, right? All the pen on a separate layer. I'm going to go in here, and if you're using a mouse, which he did, then you can use the wand tool and have it set to select everything regardless of what layer you're on, which in this software, GIMP, is called sample merged. I'm not sure what they'd call it in Photoshop, but just make it so regardless of what layer you're on, because we're in black and white here, right? And I'll hold down the shift key and select all the areas that want to turn green. And you can see it's starting to select them. This is called the, they call it something like the bee line. I can't remember exactly what it was. If you imagine a bunch of bees like dancing around in a certain line. So you have that. I select all these areas. I want to go green over here too. And that little spot didn't get picked up. Okay. Now what happens if I fill this in? Right. Now I have all that filled in. And you see this color is a little bit easier on the eye. Now when I filled this in, another point I wanted to make, and he did a pretty good job at this. I'm not sure exactly what he did. But you can see here his colors go right up to the line and merge in there pretty well. So that's okay. But let me take away, let's see what happened when I did this. Actually, it kind of leaves this white line, right? And so there's different ways to deal with that. One thing I can do is, let me undo that first. I can get rid of all of these. Well, let me show you the technique while I have this selected anyway. While I have this selected, I can go into the select menu and grow the selection, right? So I'm going to grow it by like 2 or 3 pixels to see what happens, right? And now you can see the selection is going all the way up into the black area. So if I was using just one layer, and if my colors were, set like that, and I use just one layer, let's see what happens when I fill it in now. And it's a little slow, right? So now you can see it's like butt to butt, it covers that. There's no white space left in between because I grew the selection, made it a little bit bigger. But what's going to happen now is it's cutting off some of the black, the original ink work that I drew in there, right? It's overlapping it, it's going over it. So that's why you want to have separate layers, and I make sure that my color layer is under that, right? So now I can see here's when the color layer is under, and here's when it's over. See how it overlaps it? So I want this to be on a separate layer and to be under it, and now I get a perfect merge, right? It's just flawless. And let's look at when we go in here, not as perfect, right? Also, I use the original image here. I have a much larger image, so this one works out better. Let me get this, and now that I'm on that color layer, and I bring out my brush, I can just freely paint all around here and there. I don't have to worry about going over the black because I have it on separate layers. So if you get the original from the artist, it's a better way to color. Make sure you get the original. And of course, my friend who did this was probably giving me a bit of a surprise. Well, he certainly did. It was a happy surprise. I liked it. And, you know, so that happened that he didn't ask me in advance. But yeah, you should always ask the artist in advance to get a nice big version of just the black and white layer. So it would look like this basically. It would be like just the black with no nothing behind it, and then you could start to fill it in however you wanted to. So you have like a transparent layer. Okay, so that works out like that. And now if you still want to do the same lighting effects, of course you can still do that. I have this color, I can bring it up lighter, you know, to a white area and start to fill it in, you know, like this. It'll be just a lighter shade of green. We can go in here, maybe have it like this. But because it's a lighter, you might even choose to use a sort of a bright yellow. And we can bring that opacity down on the brush a bit. Sort of go like this. I have a little bit of a glow to it. And fill all of that area in there. Something like that. Let me see, get this here. Yeah, and so that's like one technique that you could use for that. They have other stuff here like skin color. Skin color is good on here. Hair color, maybe the same problem. Let me see. Yeah, it's up a very, very high saturation. I would bring that down a little bit. So we could color that in here. Oops, get back to full opacity. I'm just going to do this one guy here. And as you can see, I can just color it in freely and not have to worry. If you color like really far outside the lines, that's okay too, because I'm on this separate layer, so I can just take out the eraser and go back and erase the parts that I don't want. Okay. And that's all the, you know, important things that I had to cover. There's one other thing, another technique that you could use to make sure that the black mixes in with the black lines mix in with this. They use the multiply effect on the layer. Let me see what happens if we do that now on this pen layer up here. And they have this in Photoshop too. You choose a layer, and then it has many type of styles, or I don't know how to say it. It's just a different trick that you can apply to the layer to do it like that. And in this case, it doesn't really do anything. I mean, the way that I did it was just fine, but apparently if you change that layer to multiply, then it will help the top layer and the bottom layer to merge together better. See how if you look in this area here, you can see some little white space creeping up in there. But you can go in, because I'm on a separate layer and I have it set to multiply. So we can go in like that. All these little white spaces here. And of course I'm using a drawing tablet. Makes it a little bit easier. But you could also do this with a mouse the way I showed you with the selection tool. Like that, and that would work better. Most importantly was the was this part here with the, if you make it, you know, if you change it into the desaturated version and how it gets kind of muddy like that. So let's take the one I just did here and desaturate that. I think this is only per layer, right? And even that, see, it's a little bit dark. See how it's kind of dark? But I can go in with lighting and shade and make it pop out a little bit more. So it's really amazing how you have to like make it really, really light sometimes. What I would actually do This was just an example, but I'd probably bring it up really, really high like that. Just make it so super light so that when you desaturate it, and people don't believe this when they see it, I know, and you don't have to believe me if you don't want to. You can go look it up yourself. But really just make it super light and just give a little bit of the color in there. And then later on, when you add shading, you can, well, you can choose to saturate it a little bit more if you want to. You don't have to. It's mostly about leaving that light color in there. This one I don't really need. Now let's see what happens if I desaturate that. Yeah, now we're starting to look a little bit more natural. See? So always just try that, flip back and forth. If you look at this one now and you compare it, see how dark it is? It's really kind of hard. And like I said, yeah, it's supposed to be nighttime. I understand that. I get it. But nighttime doesn't mean like really, really dark saturation. Doesn't mean you put, you know, tons and tons of color. It should be down here in that pastel type of area. And then if you try that, check the results, see what happens, and you might like it better. You might. If you like it this way, then keep it that way too. That's fine. You know. But I thought this might be worth consideration. And you can use these two colors. You know, you have a darker green and light one. Just come in and do some shading like this too. It's kind of easier that way. Try a little bit of this. Sometimes if you feel like you're stuck, don't feel like you're stuck to go in the lines. Go outside, get that shading exactly where you want it, and then just erase the parts you don't like. You'll see a lot of that if you're watching the professionals do their job. If you have a round surface like this, it's really good to have it like, you can bring the opacity down, just slowly, gradually fade off into that area. And that happens with all of the round surfaces. So put the opacity up and just let it fade into the other color. It looks a little bit more natural. Because it's supposed to be round like a ball. If you look at a ball in the light, it doesn't suddenly have dark and suddenly just white areas very sharp like that. It gradually, where the light is hitting it, it just gradually fades off to the darkness. Just like if you look at the moon or the earth, it should be the same. Yeah, but see how the contrast of the light in this part, the light in this part is not very bright. It's brighter than over there, but not very bright. So that's the main trick, I guess, I'm trying to teach here, is you find whatever software you're using, find some way to turn it into a black and white and look at what your values are. These are called values. And any professional artist, you ask them, you know, you can call it tones. Some people call it tones, some people call it value. But it's just knowing how strong are your lights and your darks. And if you just grab some color and just start, you know, color it in like that, this is what happens. You get all of your they call it muddy values. So if all the values are really strong and you don't have a contrast of like the light and the dark, then yeah, that's what happens. So it's so much easier, just use very light values and then slowly figure out where your shade should be. I guess that's about all. So if you look at this, just give you an idea of how I did that, and look how long it took me, because I understood that concept of the values. Didn't take me long at all, just like 5 or 10 minutes, and I got that done right. Okay, so hope you guys appreciate that, and we'll see you in the next episode. Have a good day.